Hello friends, this is Growl. Shadowlands closed beta just started yesterday, and since there's a ton of people that still haven't got a chance to play, I wanted to give you the heads up on how things are looking and how the game feels so far. The video is going to cover my impressions of Druid after running some dungeons and checking out the new abilities. The gameplay felt pretty fun. I feel that Druid is pretty similar to how it was, which is a good thing, with a few changes that make the rotation a bit funner. I'm not really going to focus much on tuning or how one thing compares to another, since these things can and will change many times until the game's release. Instead, I'm just going to focus on the changes, how stuff feels, and let you guys decide if the class feels right for you. I wasn't sure what to do with this video, if I wanted to do some gameplay or what. I decided on just we're chilling in the Night Fae area and I'll talk here because there's so many different talent changes and skills and abilities that I want to show you guys. So first, let's talk about what's missing. Coming from BFA, you'll quickly notice the disappearance of all the BFA systems. Azurite armor, essences, your legendary cloak, corruptions, all gone. Resto, Druid, and M+ felt pretty complete without any of those things. All those things just enhanced what Druid did, although the essence customization for dungeons was pretty nice. The biggest thing that you'll notice actually is the stats. The stat squish brings your haste, mastery, and every other stat down to single digits. Your casts are going to be slower, you're going to be less tanky, and your heals will heal for less. Honestly, I don't mind it at all. While it still feels a little slow, having way less haste, it's something that I'm getting used to, and I don't actually mind the slower gameplay. To me, it's a bit more fun than just karate chopping my keyboard for 40 minutes hoping that I don't miss a global. If you're doing high M+ or Mythic Raid, the game's still going to feel really fast-paced anyway. And honestly, with 50% or more haste or whatever it is in Battle for Azeroth right now, World of Warcraft was starting to feel more like Diablo. But now let's dive into the most important thing, the class skill changes. We're just going to go through the whole spellbook and talk about some of the things that I noticed. So the first one is Cyclone. Cyclone is now baseline for all druids, I believe. I love that Resto Druid is getting more utility, doubling down on their strength of having lots of tools for different situations. The one thing that comes to mind with Cyclone is the bolstering management, but I'm sure there'll be tons of other uses for Cyclone, and it's even sort of a hard interrupt, if you will, just with a longer cast time that you can use if there's an ability that really needs to get stopped. There are a few other things too, like Iron Fur and some other small abilities that were made baseline. I don't think they're super important, but it is kind of cool. Next is the regrowth change. So they added a secondary part to regrowth. The initial heal has a 40% increased chance for a critical effect if the target already has regrowth on them. It definitely felt a bit clunky for single target healing when you had all your hots on them and they're still taking damage and you're using regrowth, but it's like, you know, you're not really getting that much value out of it anyway. This change made it a little bit less bad to just bomb regrowth into somebody if they already have regrowth but they need it. I think it's a reasonable change. The one that I'm most happy about is Stampeding Roar. Shift into bear form, let loose a wild roar, increasing the speed of party members. It says 15 yards, it says 20 yards. I don't know yet, but it increases people's speed. It's on a 2-minute cooldown. You really love to see it. It's going to feel so good to use in M+ and in Raid. I'm sure in PvP as well. You'll end up using this in all forms of content. I love having a speed boost. I think this may even fit Druid into some raid comps that maybe you didn't want a Shaman because there's a lot of spread or movement, but you still wanted that speed boost, so you can use Stampeding Roar instead of having the Windrush Totem. Now on to Resto skills. So one thing is Ironbark has changed. It has the Stonebark benefit baked in, where it increases healing of all your hots. However, the cooldown is increased to 1.5 minutes. I honestly think this is a good change. It's definitely a nerf, but Druid's external tank cooldowns were just on another level compared to every other healer. You have healers like Shaman that don't even have one to begin with, and then Druids have one on a 1-minute cooldown. So I think this change was necessary, and it's nice that we got the healing benefit in there. So even though it was a cooldown nerf, it still is changed a little bit and feels still good to use. Another cool thing is that we get Nature's Swiftness back. Empowering the next regrowth or entangling roots or rebirth that you cast gives 100% healing on the regrowth and making it instant. I wasn't sure how the spell was going to feel, but actually it feels really, really good to use. It lets you use your Swiftmen more liberally and strategically, and you can just sort of fall back on the Nature's Swiftness as your uh-oh heal when something goes wrong and you need a big heal. It essentially makes your regrowth it turns your regrowth into a Swiftmend every 1 minute or so. You can also macro it into your spells. Like, for instance, Rebirth, you can just throw it in there, and anytime that you need a battle res, if you have it up, you can just make your battle res instant. One thing is that they changed Swiftmend back. Swiftmend consumes a hot on use, but it has a shorter mana cost and cooldown. Although I definitely think this is a nerf, to me it feels more fun, and I like the decision making on strategy of using Swiftmend now. So the priority that it works is exactly as it says on the tooltip. So it'll always remove regrowth first. It doesn't matter if you have a rejuve with 1 second left and you just put a fresh regrowth, it'll always remove that regrowth. So you kind of want to keep that in mind, that you don't want to remove your big rejuves and you may have to throw regrowth first. But if anything, that kind of teaches you good hot layering anyway. You shouldn't always just be blowing your Swiftmen right away. That's it for the most part of the skill changes. Now let's look at some of the talents. For the most part, the talent tree is the same as what it was. There are a few changes. So one thing you'll notice is they removed Prosperity in favor of Nourish. It sort of makes sense given the changes to Swiftmen and Nature's Swiftness. I sort of understand why Prosperity doesn't fit in as well anymore. However, Nourish also kind of feels clunky to me. It's a big single target heal because it receives triple bonus from your mastery. However, the cast time is really long and you're giving up Cenarian Word for it, which is also a big single target heal bonus anyway. So I feel like the change to regrowth sort of accomplished what they wanted to accomplish here, with the single target healing feeling clunky, and I don't really know if I like the Nourish. We'll have to see. It may take some tuning or some different uses. Nourish just sort of feels bad to use because it doesn't apply a hot. It doesn't continue increasing your healing with your mastery. It just sort of is a heal. So then the next thing they did is they changed balance affinity. So I didn't include this in the skills, but they've actually linked Typhoon to balance affinity. So now Typhoon is off of the next row and you must take balance affinity to use it. I think this is definitely a slight nerf, but it's a good change again. Now it balances out this row. It encourages you more to use balance affinity in dungeons or raids if you feel like you want to get use of that Typhoon. So it may have some interesting gameplay where you'll have to learn to chicken weave and cat weave at the same time if there's important things that you need to Typhoon. It's not like super important, but also it frees up this row too. So in dungeons, you almost never take Mighty Bash or Mass Entangle, but now these two are options, as well as the new replacement of Heart of the Wild. Heart of the Wild increases your affinity ability damage by 30% for 45 seconds, which is actually pretty long. It may seem crazy that it's a 5-minute cooldown, but the window that it gives you when you press it is actually really, really big. It's not super impactful, and I wish they sort of made something a little bit more fun. Like, for example, if you select Balance Affinity, you'll see that it makes your Star Surges instant, which is kind of cool. So I think maybe they could have... I wish it would have been more stuff like that and less just like, well, 30% damage. But it's still a great option, and it'll feel good to have a DPS cooldown as a Druid. The last talent change is Overgrowth. Since they've sort of baked in Stonebark to Ironbark, they needed a single target healing option on this row. This, I don't know if it'll see a whole lot of play. It'll be similar to Stonebark, where if you know you're going to need single target healing and you probably won't get that much benefit from Spring Blossoms or Inner Peace, you have this option. It, to me, feels a little mana clunky, but you never know. It might be something that you can use. 1 minute cooldown does seem like kind of a long time, though. It's like... I feel like you shouldn't really have that much of a cooldown on it because it ends up costing so much mana anyway. And the last row is more or less the same. There's still possibly many changes to come. This is just things that I'm seeing in the beta right now. And now I want to show you guys some of the Covenant stuff. I haven't fully explored everything, but I can share with you what I've figured out so far. So each Covenant has a signature ability and then a special ability for each class. So you have so I've selected Night Fae. So you have a Night Fae ability and you have a Druid Night Fae ability. I think Night Fae is going to be the competitive Mythic Plus healer option, at least for Horde. The Night Fae ability is Soul Shape, which turns you into this foxy dude, makes you run faster. I guess it kind of fits in with Druid. If you ever wanted to be a Vulpira Druid, now's your chance. More like a Druid. Sorry. So anyway, what's important about this ability is the talent tree sort of thing here. So you can actually pick different paths that modify your ability. So the most important one by far, and the reason I think this is good, is the very first one, Sylvari Mantle. What it does is it conceals you when you end your soul shape form, and the concealment acts as a shadow meld or a vanish. So for example, if I have a macro set up already to cancel my form right here, and I get this buff on me where it turns me invisible, and it will drop combat. So at any time as a healer, if you need to drop combat to drink, if you need to drop combat to do a single res, because your team is wiping and you need to drop to res to save the run back, that's an option. So I think this is going to be one of the premier options for healers. I'm definitely going to explore some of the other options, but this is what I figured out so far. I'm going to leave a link in the description with all the other options if you want to click around and see like what are the other paths and what are the other class ones. It'll be a Wowhead link. So the other thing is the Covenant ability that you get. So for Druids, this is actually one of the most absurd abilities I've seen so far in WoW. It's called Convoke the Spirits. Call upon the Night Fae. You channel a rapid flurry of 16 Druid spells and abilities over 4 seconds. So essentially what this means is you just cast a bunch of spells. It acts as like a pseudo big cooldown that you can press. So it also favors what form you're in. So if you're in cat form and you press it, it'll be using like bite and shred and swipe and stuff. But if you're in human form, it'll mostly be using heals. So from my testing so far, this ability is really, really powerful. It's as strong or stronger than Trank, but it's on a 2-minute cooldown. So like I'll press it right here and I just start casting a bunch of spells rapidly. You can't see very much because I'm in a party by myself, but you can see it immediately puts regrowth on me. Wild growth. I think it's swift mended off the regrowth or something. Like it's hard to even tell what it's doing. I'll be interested to see if there's eventually a weak aura or some sort of UI design to see exactly what you're casting there. But when I was running it in dungeons, I would press it and it would just be like an immediate full party heal over 4 seconds as long as you can channel it. One last thing that's cool about it is so the very last bonus in this tree, Grove Invigoration, it boosts your mastery by 10% or a little bit less because it tapers off when you use this ability. So this is something that you want to be using as much as you can during a dungeon. You don't necessarily want to save this for an emergency. You just want to keep pressing it because every time you press it, you're going to get a mastery bonus, and mastery is really good. Stats are really good for healers in M+. And again, I'll leave a link for the description if you guys want to check out all these options. I'll be sure to try some other healers maybe, or just some other Druid builds to see what other stuff might be viable. Right now, time is limited, and I'm just trying to, get into experience the dungeons and everything as is. Unfortunately, there's no Druid legendaries set up yet, but when they are in, I'll be sure to bring you guys that info and how they change the gameplay and what sorts of legendary stuff they have set up. That sums up most of my thoughts on Shadowlands so far. Thanks for watching. I appreciate if you enjoyed the video that you give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I plan on creating more Shadowlands beta videos, as well as still high Mythic Plus content for BFA, and then eventually Shadowlands as well. Let me know in the comments if you want to see some more Druid stuff, maybe some more builds, or if you want to see another healer. I do want to check out Mistweaver and check out Resto Shaman and see how all those feel in Mythic Plus as well. So thanks again for watching, and happy keying.